All right, so as I mentioned a few lectures back, there's a few ways to get started with Angular. You can start from scratch, which I definitely would not recommend. You could use a seed package, or you could use the CLI, which is the most popular by far, and the most recommended and the most powerful. Also the easiest. So this is the GitHub page for the command line interface. You don't need to go here for anything. I just wanted to just kind of show you this page as an example of some of the things you can do. So to install it, we're going to use Node Package Manager. So we'll use the npm command, and we'll just install, and then -G, which stands for global, meaning that we can access it from anywhere on our system, and then the package name is going to be @angular/CLI. Okay, once we do that, we can use the ng command, and we can run, for instance, ng help. That'll show us all the different things we can do. To create a new project, we do ng new. If we want to serve our application on a dev server in the browser, we can do ng serve. If we want to generate components, for example, we can do ng generate or ng component and then the name. We can generate services, pipes, directives, all of these different things we can generate or scaffold into our application, which is very, very nice and very convenient. Okay, now when we first start creating components, I'm not going to use the generator because I want you guys to really understand the structure of a component, the files, and all that. So we'll do it from scratch first, and then we'll start to use the generation. Okay, you might want to just take a look at this GitHub, but we're going to go ahead and install it now. So what I'm going to do is open up Git Bash. Let me just go down here and search for Git Bash and open that up. Okay, so you can use Control and your mouse wheel if you want to make this bigger or smaller. So this is standalone Git Bash. This isn't from within our Visual Studio Code like you saw in the last video. You really only want to use that when you're in a specific project. Right now we're not. We're installing this globally. So let's go ahead and let's run npm. And if you want to make sure that you have npm, you can do npm-v. That'll give you your current version. You can also check your node version with node v. But we're going to go ahead and do npm install -g at angular/CLI. And that will get it installed for us. And at this time, I think it's the CLI version is 1.5, and when we generate a new application, by default, it will be Angular version 5. Okay, but like I've said before, depending on when you're watching this, it could be different. You might have Angular 6 released at the time you're watching this, and that's fine. This stuff should all be the same. If it isn't, the course will be updated. Alright, so now that that's installed, what you want to do is go to wherever you want to create your project. So I'm actually in my user folder here, or my home folder I should say, and I'm just going to create a new folder here called projects, and I can do that with mkdir, so make directory, and I'm going to call it projects. Okay, and then I'm going to cd into projects. So from here, what we'll do is generate a brand new application using the CLI. So we'll say ng space new, and then we'll call this, let's call it Angular app. Okay, so what that's going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to generate all of the files we need to create our application. Okay, to run, to develop, to compile. Everything is going to be put together into a nice wrapped up package for us. Okay, it's going to include TypeScript. It's going to include all of the different packages that make up the Angular framework. It's going to include testing utilities, everything we need. Okay, so now if we were to do an ls, which is just to list the contents of the projects folder, you'll see we now have an Angular app folder. So what I'm going to do is cd into Angular app, and if I do ls again, it'll show us the contents of that folder. Now I want to open our application in Visual Studio Code, so there's a few ways to do that. Okay, so one way, if I just go to my home folder, which is in my users, Brad, and projects. So we could just go ahead and we could right click and say open with code. We could go into code and go to open folder and look for it here, or we could go in the command line and just say code space dot, and that should open it up right in that folder. And over here you can see Angular app, and you can see all the files that were created. We'll just close this welcome page up. All right, so now we're ready to work on our application. Now I'm not going to go over the files and folders yet. We're going to do that in the next video. What I want to do is open up the integrated terminal, which you can do by going to either view integrated terminal or the control tilde key or command tilde. And now you can see we're actually in our application folder. So from here, let's explore ng a little more. So if we do ng help, what this will do is it'll show us all the commands. Let me just go to the top here. It'll show us all of the different commands along with the flags that are available. And I'm definitely not going to go through all of them. You can see there's a lot. But ng build, so what that does is it'll build your application and place it into an output path, which by default is a dist folder. So when you're done with your app and you're ready to deploy it, you do ng build, and it'll compile it into static assets where you can just upload it to your host or your whatever service you're using to deploy to the internet. And these are just all the different flags that are included. Okay, we also have ng completion, which adds autocomplete functionality. Ng doc opens the official documentation. E2E is for end-to-end testing. A lot of this stuff we're not going to use, but just to show you it's available. Ng eject will eject your app and output the proper webpack configuration. We're not going to deal with that. Basically, all we're going to deal with is ng new, which we've already done. Ng build at the end when you want to build out your application or compile it. Ng generate is used to create things like components and services, different concepts, different aspects of Angular. Ng help we just did. Ng lint will add a linter to your code to check your formatting and so on. Ng new we've already used. Ng serve is to open up your application in a development server. It has auto load, and it's just fantastic, and that's what we'll be using for development. All right, so what I'm going to do now is just go down to the bottom here, and let's actually run our application where we can actually do that now. So we're going to say ng serve. Now, if we just do ng serve with no flags, it will start the dev server, but it won't open it. It won't open the browser automatically. We'll have to navigate to the URL. If we want to open it automatically, we can simply say -- open. So let's go ahead and run that and see what happens. So if it's the first time you're on Windows, you'll get this firewall thing, also asking what browser. I want Chrome. And this is what you're going to get. So this is the boilerplate default Angular application. And notice that it's running on localhost port 4200. That's the default Angular port. Okay, so if we didn't do -- open, let me just click allow here. If we didn't do -- open when we did ng serve, we would just have to navigate to this ourselves. Okay. One last thing I want to do, I'm not going to go into the files yet, we're going to do that in the next video, but I want to install Augury, okay, which actually it's already installed for me because I forgot that I signed into Chrome. But if you want to install this, you can search for, I think it's Augury extension, we'll say Chrome. I didn't spell that right, but that's fine. So this is the extension right here. You can check it out, the description, all that. But basically, it'll show you like your component state, your component properties, things like that. So if I go to my Angular app that's running on my local host, and we go to the dev tools, so we hit F12, open up the dev tools, and I actually like this to be on the bottom. So I'm going to put that on the bottom, and you'll see we have an Augury tab. And if I click that, It's not going to show us very much because this is a default Angular application, but you'll see app component. Okay, so every Angular application has an app component, which is like the root component, and any other ones that you create you put inside of the app component. Now over here under state, you'll see there's a property called title, which is equal to app. Okay, and that's actually being output here. Now I don't expect you to understand what any of what I just said means yet because we haven't gone over it, but just to let you know that this is a nice little tool to view your state in your application, in your components. You can view the router tree. We don't have any routes. Obviously, we're not using the router yet. You can also see your ng modules. I don't expect you to know what any of that is, but it's a nice little tool if you want to use it. Okay, but it's not mandatory, just something that you might find useful. All right, and of course, we're going to be using the console here as well to see any error messages, to debug, to do things like that. All right, so now that we have our default Angular application up and running, in the next video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to look at the folders and files. Now to stop the server, you just want to do Control-C, and that will stop the server from running. If I go back and reload, it's not going to work anymore. Okay, so that's it, guys. I will see you in the next lecture.